Nam-Speers, and my co-presenter is Dr. Kalachi Oslozuko. We are thrilled to share how we can better plan for online educational service on quantitative reasoning. Our panel topic consists of two parts. One is technical pedagogical content knowledge focused on student engagement, which I cover, and the second part is some useful tips and experience that Dr. Kalachi Osatsuko has had focus on YouTube material development. Please feel free to put your questions on the chat box on the bottom of the screen while our presentation is ongoing. We'll answer the questions at the end of the presentation. Okay, so here is a logic model, theoretical model for transitioning onto online modality to answer the question, how is the instructor planning for her instruction? Moving on to the virtual space can consist of several steps. First is to have substantive content on quantitative methods, which is ingredients of a curriculum. The second is pedagogical knowledge. We didn't have much time to prepare for online teaching method when the COVID occurred in March last year, but we just made immediate and huge efforts in developing efficient online modality and looked into other online engagement resources such as YouTube and Coursera, etc. Going back to the question, how is the instructor planning for her instruction? The essence of the question is whether or not the instructor's teaching service should be totally linked to the spot on students' engagement during the class activities. One of the most frustrating parts of online class to me is whether the students are listening to me. How can instructors bring students' participation and response into class activities? Without student engagement, there is no way to actualize student learning. This is beyond instructors' digital technology skills, I think. So let me ask you about what methods you use to facilitate a student's engagement on online class. In order for you to participate in this activity, I mean, you wouldn't be able to join this activity right now because this is a webinar, not a regular Zoom. But in your actual synchronous class, you can use this function so that students participate in class activities like this way. So you see this tab, the annotate. Once you click the annotate, you will see stamp here, and you will see this snapshot on the regular Zoom, but not in the webinar. So you can use it this way. So click the anecdote here, and then stamp. Then you can choose whatever you want, and you can let them do it, and like this way. So you can provide this kind of student engagement opportunity to them. And also you make sure once you finish this purpose of activity, make sure click the clear button or drawings, and then close the red button. Otherwise, this mark keep following you until you finish, slides. Okay, so your cursor around there, you will see this taskbar. So it's kind of sometimes hard to find out the taskbar. Okay, so students' learning styles are all different. So for example, there are visual learners, auditory learners, and kinesthetic learners. It is always good to make different modalities of the same contents because students can have different preferences on the types of materials. For instance, kinesthetic learners need to have a few short breaks. can drink water or stretch their body for a few times, please be aware that perhaps we are the only ones that are excited in quantitative reasoning. Most students are not necessarily be the same way and different from us. So 5 minutes breaks can give the students to have refreshed feelings. There are other reasons that why we need to use different modalities. Why do we need to develop different modalities? Because sometimes weather does not allow us to use the internet very well. So we need to consider low bandwidth options instead of internet use. So some of my students are police officers, so their environment is not always preferable, and they can participate in the class in their car. Okay. So this is a typical scene of online video lecture that students can see on YouTube. We have 4 types of modalities, so video to audio, so image to text. Definitely streaming video like YouTube is more likable for most students, but use much more data. So when the internet is unstable, this becomes unreliable. The environment can be problematic. So let's talk about low bandwidth options more. We wanted to know how to step down our resources. For example, for the students who are not guaranteed to have a stable internet, or for audio learners, or even for the students who are easily distracted by YouTube videos, they just forget that they are doing study once they, exposed to YouTube. So the PowerPoint slide, sometimes it can be more useful for that kind of learners. So you see these little icons on the PowerPoint. So record the slideshow, tab, use this function, and so students don't even have to have the internet all the time. Just make sure to send an email notice of class topics and activities in a weekly basis. Inform students to download the PowerPoint file that the internet is available, and then they can open the file in their iPhone or other devices when the internet is not available. For instance, whenever they drive a car or on the way home from work, they can listen to my voice lecture in their cars. So let me show them how to do it. So you press this button, speaker button, then record testing 1, 2, 3. Okay, so you can set up the default, the speaker in the first page, and then going through the entire slide. Then maybe they can complete 1 session of the lecture on the way home. Okay, find a way to let students choose the most reliable version of modalities depending on their situation. Meanwhile, we have the PUAD 628, 630 sequence of the Quantitative Methods courses in the MPA program, and Dr. Kalachi teaches 628, and I teach 630. So my teaching is a little bit advanced, and students actually required to learn not only technical skills, but also write up research papers, including full analysis. And eventually they are required to provide policy recommendations based on what they have learned during probing their term paper project. But some students are, sort of overwhelmed. Maybe they might have some bad anxiety, as Jeremy talked about. And even though they learn substantial techniques, some students just underestimate their ability, and they're just easily overwhelmed. In that case, you would like to provide a short story or comic books, including stats, to them and use their storyteller instincts. So remember that MPA students are all basically ambitious and all storytellers who have their own stories and motivations. So this is an example story called The King and the Stats. It is a story about a king in a royal palace. One day he ordered the palace tailor to make a royal clothes the king likes, but the tailor has no idea about the king's favorite. Eventually, he got so sick and concerned about it and started to feel sick, and couldn't eat at all. But his little assistant is so smart, and he started to investigate what the king would like. And then he followed the king's steps and visited his room to see what kind of fashion items that he has. So yes, and he say like, because he likes it, wouldn't he wear them a lot? Yes, it's likely to be or not. Then the research, the tailor made new clothes based on his findings, and the king overjoyed about what the tailor made. This table and figures show descriptive statistics and predicting what the king likes based on what he is wearing, or the fashion items that he has had in the palace are about inferential statistics. So this simple comics can motivate students' research instinct and give them insights to let them lead to their self-sufficient research project. Does this make sense? Okay. In the meantime, I also have a doctoral statistics course. Doctoral students in the most program should take a preliminary exam, even though our program does not offer that. Anyway, before they get to the dissertation stage, most students are kind of, get to, put themselves in the intensive learning on methodology, right? So individual PowerPoint slides said, focus on the individual topic of the lecture can be helpful, but not all. Sometimes students want to take a seat and read more comprehensive knowledge using a book. So most statistic textbooks are too much number-oriented, but I wrote in this ebook as I speak colloquially based on my PowerPoint materials and the YouTube lecture, just like what I say. Though there are some mathematical formulas, to make this ebook could not be done without the UB library resources and the CELTT fellow colleagues. So keep in mind, you have actually more university resources than your expectations. So try to connect them. What kind of resources can be available for you whenever you transition the offline teaching materials to online materials. So I really thank them for their hard and conscientious work. Okay. All right. So to recap, ask about yourself. About whether you can be an online teaching entrepreneur, take a risk to be an entrepreneur in curricular innovation, be self-sufficient in professional development from your own virtual resource network in your program or in your school. We have had such a wonderful network for the improvement of our teaching skills on quantitative reasoning. Even before the pandemic, we have had this network, which is Dr. Alan Lyles started to offer. We wanted to be self-sufficient by learning by doing. We have created, shared, and tried to diffuse professional resources through the networks to get more synergy. Host this kind of webinars to communicate and learn from each other. So always keep in mind, it's important to improve pedagogical mentality that we experience in flying as a passenger by airplane does not necessarily mean the passenger can be a good pilot. Likewise, even though we have a doctorate degree in a certain field, that doesn't mean we can teach you what we know well. So things can be much more frustrating as students than our expectation, but we can improve the environment by sharing information on what we are teaching through virtual resource networks. Okay, so I wanna say one theoretical thing. One thing I wanted to tell you is that this virtual resource network is like a type of entrepreneurial guild, as if in the Middle Age, guild existed as an association of merchants who oversee the practice of their craft trade in a particular area. I think quantitative reasoning network at a College of Public Affairs has played a role as an instruction entrepreneur guild. So I'm really glad to meet with them, and I'm glad that I can share my own experience too. All right, so far I have talked about things to know about why we should transition the modalities, focus on student learning. I would like to introduce my colleague, Dr. Kelechi Ozozuko, why she presents for engaging students and her YouTube experiences. Please put your facial expressions on the chat box on the bottom of the webinar about how you feel about your entrepreneurship and its possibility about innovative online class introduction. Since you cannot put the little stickers using the Zoom or annotate, you can use the keyboard typing on the chat box.